Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday worship service. I am Martha Schmidt, and I will be the celebrant this morning. I've been a member of this church for around 30 years. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of those who are joining us for the first time. We are very glad you are here. If you haven't already stopped in, please visit the welcome desk in the foyer and pick up a name tag and a newcomer's packet. Our welcoming committee members have yellow name tags. There aren't very many, but lots of people know the answers to the questions and can point you toward additional information. If you're joining us online, we'd ask you to fill out the newcomer form on the website so that we can be in touch to answer any questions you might have. Meanwhile, our usual practice is to gather in community for coffee and conversation after the service, either downstairs in the fellowship hall or in our Zoom room. We want everyone to feel supported and at home here. So let's begin in that spirit by saying our words of welcome together. Whether this is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, and whether you strolled, rolled, Zoomed, ran, or danced in, we are glad you chose to join us. We are one people of many identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. All are welcome here. Now we will take a moment to say hello across the technical divide. First, we're going to show the people joining us on Zoom. If you are at home, please turn on your camera. Now, people at home, wave. Now, people who are attending the service in our building, it's your turn to wave. I did not have any announcements given to me this morning. The land on which our church is built is part of the ancestral homeland of the Nimipu, the people, and the Paluspam, people located at the village where the rock is standing up in the river. It was frequented by the Shishumsh, the ones found here, located to the north and called the Coeur d'Alene by the French-speaking traders. We acknowledge the land is held in sacred kinship since time immemorial, and that the land and its peoples measurably brought by Euro-Amity. Indigenous communities respect and contribute to the healing and nurturing of this precious land and all its peoples. We are hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Cooper is going to light our chalice this morning. Please join me in the chalice affirmation. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. Trish Hartzell and myself are members of the shared worship team along with 12 other congregational members. We collaborate with Reverend Elizabeth, who is on sabbatical now until the end of September, in planning the Sunday worship services. I think I can speak for almost everyone here that we aided by that daily, it seems, since the last election. This Sunday services focused on methods that might be helpful to our neural regulation, such as meditation. We learned a method called tapping, and how critical. The service last Sunday reminded us that we have been here before. We may have thought women had won the right to have an abortion and that voting was a right for all women and people of color, but we find there are roadblocks being thrown up every which way. Today, the service on the Iowa Sisterhood will shine a light on a time in American history when women were encouraged to train as ministers and their congregations thrived in the small towns where they served. Each of us can strive to do the right thing. We can smile when we walk out among strangers. We can listen with compassion in the face of anger. We can lead with our hearts. Let's sing our first hymn, number 357. I chose this hymn because it reminds me that I can find solace and love in the simplest things. Number 357, Bright Morning Stars. I'm just going to play it through once, and then we'll start singing. Now let's take a moment to engage in the practice of generosity together. For those of you able to make a financial contribution, the logistics are on the screen. We typically give away all of the cash from our Sunday offering to local charities whose missions align with our values, a program called the Month of Sundays. This month, the recipient is Outreach Idaho, a 501c3 organization formed in 2024 to serve regional victims of abuse in high-control patriarchal communities that have far above average incidents of child sexual abuse, marital rape, physical assault, religious manipulation, and many other forms of coercive abuse. The majority of people requesting assistance are women from Christchurch or related Kirk families. Outreach helps with safe shelter for women and young children, helps with finding jobs and counseling with peer support. They help with contacting appropriate law enforcement. In the spirit of love and for the continuing work of this church, we take this offering. Now is the time in the service when we lift up our joys and sorrows. The sharing of joys and sorrows is a sacred ritual in our community, a time to briefly acknowledge truly significant life events, either by submitting them in advance, typing them in the chat, or coming forward and sharing in person. So get comfortable, take a few deep breaths, and check in with your heart.
Sorrow comes. Can you hear me? How about now? Okay. Sorrow comes into every life. Each of us suffers losses and setbacks. Each of us struggles. And each of us sometimes knows defeat. Together, we create a circle of compassion wide enough to hold all the sorrow in our hearts and in our lives. If you have a sorrow to share, I invite you to come forward now. Joy, too, comes into every life. Hearts are made to love. This world and the people in it are unbearably beautiful. Together we create a circle of celebration deep enough to hold all the joys in our lives. If you have a joy to share, I invite you to come forward now.
My daughter Molly was accepted as a professor of art at UCLA a couple months ago, and we were all so pleased. The fact is that they had accepted her as a tenured professor with a sort of a period of settling in the fall, and then it would be confirmed that she was tenured. Meanwhile, I was worried because she's been pretty outspoken where she's worked on the East Coast. cautioned her to watch her words and her activism in the first months of her work at UCLA. Yesterday she got a letter and they said she has been confirmed as a professor at associate professor level 2. So I think we're all pleased.
So Miriam and I have been in Hamilton, Montana, where I grew up, where I was born and grew up. And we have been visiting with our builder in Hamilton and making choices on regarding a house that we're building. And also, it's very moving to see the lane that they have begun. They broke ground on the access lane into our plot where we're going to build. And they've begun building. They've put the pad down, and they've begun the construction process. And so, this is a piece of land where my family has lived since 1948. And so I inherited 10 acres, and so, I grew up on this land, and now to see this lane now branching off the existing lane and cutting over to where our house is going to be is kind of an overwhelming and exciting, but kind of a mixed feeling of disturbing the land. It's still a really wonderful pass-through for wildlife from the western mountains into the valley. But it still is disturbing things a little bit, but we're kind of, therefore it's kind of a mixed feeling. But it's also a joy to know that this is where we're going to be settling, mixed with the eventual sadness of leaving this community. Thank you.
I'm Michael Irvin. I bring you greetings from the slow UUs of San Luis Obispo. My wife and I were in San Luis Obispo for about 6 days in preparation for a wedding of a grandnephew. And we took the opportunity to get to meet not only one of Susan's brothers and her sister, whom she had not seen in many years, as in before COVID, but there was also a family next to their home that the two families grew up in parallel, and 3 of the brothers from the Lonsways were there. I got to play pickleball with them, go out to dinner with them, and just had a wonderful time. And I like them better than my own in-laws, so. But it's nice to be accepted. We had a wonderful time, got to take in the Hearst Castle. That's a whole nother story. But we had a joyous time, and would like to share that with all of you.
Lauren isn't here, he's away at a conference, but he has a new nephew. A little baby Calvin was born a few days ago, and everything's good except he has to be in the NICU for a while, so if we could light a candle for... We did, thank you. Think of little Calvin if you can.
This candle is a joy to have our dear friends Lori and Kevin Gardas here today with us for the week for last night, and we first met them in this church 30 some years ago. They're an important part of the community, so we're so happy
last 5 weeks, I have been experiencing what it's like to be an old person who cannot put on her shoes without pain, cannot get in bed without pain. And I really got anxious, saw some doctors, and decided, well, suck it up and go to your masseuse. And I've gotten out of pain. I can get in bed without pain. I'm learning how to put on my shoes without pain. And it's really a joy to be old. And then my husband, Brent, we're about the same age. He comes up on Friday with the same pain in the same area and the same hip and can hardly move and groaning and moaning. And I said, "You're nothing but a copycat."
Every life, every heart, every one of us at any moment is filled with joys, with sorrows, with hopes, dreams, with concerns. I'll light a final candle full of all that remains in our hearts and are still too tender to share. Life, however fragile, is a gift, and we in this community of memory, caring, and hope celebrate this gift today and all days. Amen and blessed be.
I'm going to lead you in a guided meditation. This is by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a meditation on injustice. So please get comfortable. With my posture upright but relaxed, I breathe in. And I am aware of my in-breath. Breathing out, I am aware of my out-breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathing in, I follow my in-breath from its beginning to its end. Breathing out, I follow my out-breath from its beginning to its end. Following my in-breath, following my out-breath. Aware of my whole body, I breathe in. Releasing the tensions and relaxing my whole body, I breathe out. Aware of body, releasing and relaxing. Aware of the suffering brought about by fear, discrimination, and violence, I breathe in. Giving rise to compassion for the victims of fear, discrimination, and violence, I breathe out. Aware that fear, discrimination, and violence brings suffering. Compassion for victims of fear, discrimination, and violence. Determined not to act out of fear and discrimination, I breathe in. Determined to foster nonviolence in actions of body, speech, and mind, I breathe out. Not acting out of fear and discrimination, fostering nonviolence. Aware of the suffering brought about by exploitation and social injustice, I breathe in. Giving rise to loving kindness for the victims of social injustice, I breathe out. Exploitation and social injustice, loving kindness. Aware of the suffering brought about by unmindful speech, I breathe in. Giving rise to loving thoughts and mindful words in my heart, I breathe out. Suffering caused by words, loving thoughts and words. Feeling compassion for the one I have hurt by my words, I breathe in. Determined to listen deeply and speak mindfully, I breathe out. Compassion, listening deeply and speaking mindfully. Seeing myself cultivating compassion, loving kindness, and peaceful action, I breathe in. Feeling happiness to be practicing the mindfulness trainings in my daily life, I breathe out. Practicing with love, feeling happiness. Let's sing together. Do you hear? Number 112.
This is a day about women rebels. So Mary, the character in the children's story, was actually Mary Walker. And in the 19th century, she not only broke barriers. Okay. All right, I will speak louder. She was not only the first woman, well, maybe not the first, but she was the one that broke the barrier about wearing pants. I should have worn pants today in honor of this. But she also was one of the early women to get into medical school, and so she became Dr. Mary Walker, and she was always a women's rights activist. So let's look at another group of women. In Iowa, and I didn't put a map of it up here because a lot of people confuse Iowa and Idaho, I know. Even though it's not typically seen as a hotbed of radical movements, and I know because I lived there, in the late 19th century, a group of 18 women changed everything when they began to minister in Unitarian churches in Iowa and surrounding areas. The women, called the Iowa Sisterhood, defied social expectations, challenged traditional beliefs, and broke gender norms to bring the Unitarian message to rural communities. They set the stage for suffrage in the 20th century and subsequent movements mentioned by Ken Fons last week. The Sisterhood was a success. They formed new churches and attracted new members. What made it successful, and how can we learn from them? Well, first, most movements begin with a leader, and the Sisterhood had two amazing leaders, Dr. Mary Safford and Eleanor Gordon. Mary seemed destined for her ultimate role as leader in the Unitarian Church and president of the Iowa Unitarian Association. She began preaching as a child when she lived in Illinois, while her mother promoted more traditional female activities. Her father, and again, this is reinforcing that parents are very important. They were important for Mary in that story. Her father introduced her to new unconventional ideas, such as, and this is my favorite, the theory of evolution by natural selection. Mary got it 150 years ago, and I will remind you that we are still fighting this. They are trying to remove evolution and the teaching of natural selection from the schools in the United States. Mary's partner in Unitarian ministry was Eleanor Gordon. Oh, I thought we had a picture of, maybe we didn't get a picture of Mary up there. No, there was a picture. Oh, sorry, and there's Eleanor. That's Mary. I just saw Eleanor up there. It's a grainy picture because it was taken from the internet. Eleanor Gordon lived not very far from Mary in Illinois, and she grew up in a family where religious debate was common. This may explain why, as a child, it seemed perfectly normal for Eleanor to ask her Baptist leaders who God's mother was. She was annoyed when the church leaders would not answer her questions, so she picked up and joined the Sisterhood. And I can relate to this story. I was rebuked in church when I was quite young for asking who made God. And when I didn't get an answer, I was not inspired or invited to return. As a Unitarian minister, Eleanor was known for coaxing her congregants into discussions involving math and science. So this reminded me a lot of that we're channeling Dr. Elizabeth today. She talked of a universe that was alive, fluid, and flexible, animated by a germ of expanding life. I thought that was a very colorful statement. And like Mary, Eleanor was also a fan of natural selection. I felt bonded to these women. So not only were there two good leaders, two strong leaders, but they amassed a team, a dedicated team of women. Carolyn Bartlett Crane took on very taboo subjects at the time. Probably this would still be taboo today, such as legalized prostitution and prison reform. She was known as America's housekeeper for her efforts to improve urban sanitation. As I alluded to earlier, family support was key to success of these women. The women were not only committed to helping one another, even if it meant picking up and moving everything from one location in Iowa to another, but many of the women, not all, but many of the women were married, and this surprised me a little bit. They had very strong support from their husbands. So these men were exceptional too. Caroline's husband used his position as a physician to open doors for his wife into the very guarded field of male-dominated medical science so that she could work for better access for the poor to health care. Eliza Wilkes, who led a Unitarian group in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, had 6 children and still managed to be a minister. She definitely relied on her husband's help and backing, and he was described as someone whose attention to her was constant and unqualified, and he was a dentist, so he was busy too. The fourth point was that the women took inspiration from literature. College was not always available to all of them. Some of them really struggled to go to college, and not all of them did. But the women stayed up to date on scientific and medical developments which they integrated into their ministry. They read the work of the Greek Stoics, which Zena mentioned to us a few weeks ago. And they discussed the work of fellow Unitarian Ralph Waldo Emerson. Many of us have had a person or a book that inspired us. In high school, I was enthralled with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. It changed my life. Ryan Urey gave us the book The Alchemist last year. And Zena also mentioned Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. These are all books that have changed the views and the opinions of a lot of people. So if you have your little piece of paper and your pen that you should have gotten today when you came in, we would like to hear about the name of a person, a book, or maybe even an event that changed your life and inspired you to think differently. And we'd like to share those if that's okay with you. We won't attach names. We just thought, I'd like to hear what other people are reading. I've learned some new ideas just by listening to people talk about inspirational books in here. There are a number of additional themes that I thought I gleaned from reading about the Sisterhood that might help each of us become better communicators. Number one, they were teachers by training, and that may explain why their sermons were considered more educational and less preachy. A number of men who later entered the ministry said that they were inspired to do so after hearing the women teach them. And surprisingly, it helped to be female during this period. Because the women in the pulpit were already somewhat controversial, they were actually able to introduce topics that were off limits for many of the male preachers. And not only did they lean into topics like legalized prostitution, but they talked a lot about poverty, poor working conditions, and suffrage. They used novel language and data instead of using biblical terms like corruption and judgment. The sisters talked about cause and effect, and it made sense to people. They wanted to raise awareness about dire social conditions. And their stated goal when they would meet in groups was they wanted to stir deep thought, not impose feelings or push doctrine. The Iowa sisters really intrigued me because for most of my adult life, I have wondered why political polarity has been such a constant in my life. Why aren't more people like the Iowa women? And I always asked, is there a biological basis for our differences? So now I'm going to shift gears, and this is a big shift, and speculate that the Iowa sisters were motivated to do good because of certain attributes of their brains. Magnetic resonance imaging is a powerful tool. I'll call it MRI, so I don't have to say that mouthful all the time. It's a powerful tool that we can use to look at brain activity in real time. MRI studies have shown that people with increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, which is an area right behind your frontal lobe, are very empathic. They gravitate toward novel situations, they take risks, and they accept new ideas. In contrast, individuals with a large amygdala are paranoid, fearful, and mistrustful. And I'm sorry, that sounds bad, but it is kind of bad. They think social and economic inequalities are an acceptable part of life. The Iowa women were empathic, points to their ACC, and they were fearless. And based on this, I think their behavior suggests that they had an active ACC and a small amygdala. And I would guess that most of the people in this congregation are of that ilk. An interesting pattern emerges when we look for correlations between brain scans and political leanings. You may have predicted I was going there. I'm not going to tell you where I think I am on this, but the brains of self-described liberals show an active ACC and a smaller amygdala. The opposite is true for individuals who describe themselves as conservatives. Their brain scans reveal a less active ACC and a larger amygdala, the fear part of the brain. Fear is a powerful motivator. Fear made those other children laugh at Mary because she was wearing pants, because she was, doing something different that made them uncomfortable. If you fear people who do not look or act like you try to cancel them. If you fear that your power is threatened, you will bully or try to eliminate the threat. Many of our behaviors are due to our biology. This feels uncomfortable because it seems a little out of our control, but it made me feel more tolerant of bad behavior on the other side. It gave me a little bit of compassion. There is evidence that we can persuade someone who disagrees with us if we can deal with the underlying issue, the fear. Perhaps if we remain laser focused on dealing with the opposition's fear, the fear that, a gay person is going to hurt them or is going to somehow influence them, maybe we can find ways to attenuate that. We have, as Martha mentioned, we have been here before, and we will prevail. So it's time to sing a hymn number 318, We Would Be One.